They told her she was too loud, too ambitious, not the right fit. But if a woman like her wasn't made for their world, why were they so afraid of her voice? What happens when that same voice comes back, not to speak, but to decide their fate? Let us know in the comments section below. Lauryn Braxton sat completely still, but her silence wasn't the kind that surrendered. It was the kind that sharpened itself in the dark. Across the table, 7 executives shuffled in their seats, pretending not to notice the way she'd been cut off, for the 3rd time in as many minutes. "Let's pivot back to the merger timeline," Jeffrey Cain said, already shifting his eyes to the CFO. "I think we need someone a bit more tactful, managing the vendor negotiations. The tone coming out of strategy has been, frankly, aggressive." Lauryn didn't flinch. Her spine stayed straight, her face unreadable. She just made a quiet mark in the margin of her leather notebook, drawing a single line next to Cain's name. She'd been doing that a lot lately, tracking patterns. And Jeffrey? Jeffrey was a pattern with a mouth. Victor Hines, the CEO, gave a grandfatherly chuckle, trying to soften Cain's jab like a pat on the head. "Lauryn's got fire, no doubt. But tone matters at this level, sweetheart. Stakeholders spook easily." Sweetheart. The word rang louder than any insult. She could feel her stomach tighten, familiar, nauseating heat rising to her chest. This wasn't the first time they'd dressed condescension in business casual. This wasn't the first time they'd patted her on the head while taking credit for what she built. But today, Lauryn didn't push back. She didn't defend the negotiation strategy she'd crafted that secured a $17 million 0-cent savings. She didn't remind them who turned a doomed merger into a rising headline. She didn't say a word, because she already knew this would be the last time she'd ever sit at that table as their equal. After the meeting, Lauryn walked out of the glass conference room as calm as a Sunday sermon. Her heels tapped softly across the polished floor, past the executive assistant who avoided her eyes, and past the interns who still looked at her like a legend. Because she was a legend. They just hadn't figured that out yet. Inside her office, she pulled the door closed with a soft click. Then, she opened a locked drawer and slid out a folder stamped "Confidential, Braxton and Langley Holdings." She opened it slowly, almost reverently. Inside were 3 signed commitment letters. 2 pages summarizing an offshore holding structure, and 1 page detailing her newly formed private investment group's controlling interest in the very company that just called her aggressive. She smiled, but not the kind of smile that says, "I told you so." It was the kind that says, "You're already mine." 6 months earlier, Lauryn's life was unraveling one quiet insult at a time. It started with her promotion being delayed until Q4 due to market shifts. Then it was her exclusion from key client meetings she'd personally brought in. And finally, the announcement that Jeffrey Cain, whose PowerPoints she used to rewrite in college-level English, was being named interim COO after Victor's announced retirement. Her phone buzzed one evening as she sat on her balcony, nursing a glass of wine and reading Invisible Man for the 3rd time. "Marcus Langley, you ready to stop asking for permission?" She stared at the screen for a moment, then typed just one word. "Yeah." Marcus was more than a mentor. He was a visionary, the kind of man who saw the game from above, not inside the maze. She'd interned for him when she was 19, long before her Ivy League MBA or her high potential badge in the corporate diversity initiative. He taught her early that power wasn't about presence. It was about position. Silent leverage. Invisible control. And now, Marcus had a plan. It wasn't flashy, no press releases, no vanity titles. Just quiet acquisition, quiet alignment, quiet revenge. Back in the present, Lauryn watched the office buzz through her tinted glass. Jeffrey passed by, smirking as he whispered something to Lillian Brooks, the HR lead, who once called Lauryn's leadership style abrasive. They laughed. Lauryn smiled too, this time wider. Because in 2 weeks, the shareholder vote would be finalized. And her name? It was already printed on the resolution. Not as Director of Strategy, not even as board member, but as the new Chief Executive Officer. They just didn't know they'd voted for her yet. Lauryn didn't pack up her office. She didn't clean out her desk or delete any files. That's what people did when they left jobs they were never meant to return to. But Lauryn wasn't just leaving. She was transitioning, evolving. She wasn't vanishing from this place. She was about to own it. Her resignation email was 6 lines long. No emotion, no drama, no farewell parties or hallway hugs. Just a time-stamped exit that looked like every other departure, even though it was nothing like them. To Victor Hines. Subject to formal resignation. Effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunities. Lauryn Braxton. She hit send. Then she took off her ID badge and set it gently on the mahogany desk. In the lobby, the security guard, Reggie, with a kind smile and lunch always at 11:45 sharp, glanced up from his post. Leaving early, Miss Braxton? Yeah, Lauryn said with a soft smile. Time to go build something bigger. She stepped out into the sun. Her future didn't wait in the rear view. It was already ahead, waiting with the engine running. 2 weeks later, the boardroom that had once echoed with subtle microaggressions was humming with tension. Everyone had shown up early, their tailored suits a little stiffer than usual. Something in the air said this meeting wasn't like the others. Jeffrey Kane adjusted his tie. Lillian whispered with Victor near the head of the table. There was a new lawyer in the corner. Young, sharp-eyed, silent. Then the double doors opened, and Lauryn walked in, not with a visitor's badge, not with a resume, not with the fake smile of someone still trying to impress them. She walked in like the owner of the room, which, legally, she now was. Victor's eyes widened, confused but not yet panicked. Jeffrey leaned back in his chair like this was some kind of performance. Lauryn? Victor asked, half standing. You're here? As majority shareholder representative, she said calmly, placing her folder on the table. Effective as of last Monday. Lillian let out a little laugh. I'm sorry, what? You're listed under Braxton and Langley Holdings now? Jeffrey scoffed, but his smile was starting to crack. Lauryn pulled out the stack of papers. Her fingers moved like clockwork. No rush, no pause, just precision. These documents outline the acquisition of 28% of total voting shares through individual entities and silent investor groups, cross-referenced and cleared by the SEC. You can verify with outside counsel. The young lawyer in the corner stood and nodded. Already have. Victor sat back down, hard. Lillian blinked, lips parted but speechless. And Jeffrey, finally, wasn't smiling. Lauryn didn't gloat, didn't grandstand. She simply flipped to the last page. This is the proposed leadership restructure. As acting CEO, my first official act is to dissolve this board. Jeffrey shot up from his seat. You can't be serious. I'm always serious, Lauryn replied. This is a hostile takeover, Lillian hissed. No, Lauryn said quietly. This is a correction. Victor's voice was barely audible. You planned this. No, she said. You did. Every time you silenced me, every time you passed me over, every time you smiled while taking credit for my work. You didn't just make this personal. You made it inevitable. The lawyer handed out severance packages. Thick envelopes slid across the table like verdicts. Jeffrey didn't touch his. I built this company, he spat. No, Lauryn said, finally letting the steel show in her voice. I did. You just talked louder. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, they stood, some with grace, others with burning cheeks and clenched jaws. Victor lingered. "You could have warned me," he said. Lauryn looked at him, not with malice, but clarity. "You never listened," she said. "What would a warning have changed?" He nodded slowly, then walked out, shoulders suddenly looking older. The doors closed behind them. Silence returned to the boardroom. Lauryn exhaled. Not from exhaustion, from relief. That night, she sat in her penthouse office, the one Jeffrey used to brag about having the best view from. Now it was hers. She stared out at the skyline, sipping tea instead of champagne. Not because she wasn't proud, but because this wasn't the victory moment. This was the beginning. Naomi Ellis walked in without knocking, holding 2 cartons of takeout and grinning like a woman who'd just seen karma put on heels. "You really did it." Lauryn looked over her shoulder. "We did it." Naomi plopped onto the couch, flipping open the food. "So what now, boss?" Lauryn smiled, standing with her back to the city lights. "Now," she said, voice steady, sure. "Now we change everything." Lauryn Braxton never thought the hard part would come after the takeover. She expected backlash. She expected whispers and rumors, maybe even lawsuits filed out of desperation. But what she didn't expect was the sheer resistance to change. From the very people who'd once begged for innovation, transformation, evolution. Now that she was at the helm, innovation felt threatening to them. Her presence in the CEO's office didn't inspire. It unsettled. Within 2 weeks, 3 senior directors had resigned. One claimed personal reasons, another strategic misalignment. The third, blunt as ever, told the press he couldn't adjust to her leadership style. Translation, he couldn't handle being led by a black woman who didn't bend. Naomi was in Lauryn's office when the 3rd resignation email came through. "That's 3 and 14 days, Naomi muttered, scrolling on her phone. "Think there's a betting pool somewhere in the finance department?" Lauryn didn't even flinch. "Let them bet. Let them count. I'm not here to make anyone comfortable." She sat forward in her chair, scanning the company's talent pipeline report. "We've had 4 capable mid-level managers blocked from promotion in the last 2 years. All women. 3 of them black. Let's promote 2 by end of quarter." Naomi blinked. "Just like that?" Lauryn looked up, her eyes sharp. "They were qualified 2 years ago. The delay was racism. I'm not debating legacy systems. I'm dismantling them. That was the war no one trained for. The quiet kind. The kind that didn't show up with shouting matches or protest signs, but lived in spreadsheets and hiring committees. It was in who got invited to the call, who got left off the email chain, whose idea got rephrased, repackaged, and praised when it came from someone with a different face. Lauryn knew that war. She'd lived it, and now she was flipping the battlefield. But even warriors get tired. Late one Friday, she sat alone in the executive lounge, the city lights smeared like watercolors through the windows. Her suit jacket was off, her shoes abandoned on the floor. She sipped lukewarm coffee and stared at the silent flat-screen TV on the wall, playing a financial news segment with closed captions. The anchor smiled brightly as they discussed the surprising leadership shakeup at her company. She read the caption slowly. "Insiders say Braxton's approach is disruptive and unconventional." She chuckled under her breath. The media always found new ways to call a woman dangerous without saying the word. Her phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but instinct tugged at her. She answered. The voice on the other end was deep, measured. "Ms. Braxton?" "Yes." "My name is Martin Graves. I represent several legacy shareholders. I'd like to talk." Lauryn didn't say a word at first. Graves continued. "There's concern about your direction. The board's gone. The leadership team's in flux. You've alienated key figures in the market." She leaned back in her chair. "Sounds like I'm doing my job." There was a pause, then a quiet chuckle. "You're bold. I respect that, but bold doesn't always last. Markets don't like noise, Miss Braxton. They like predictability. And you're thunder in a quiet room. Lauren's voice never rose. Maybe the room needs thunder. I'm giving you a choice, Graves said. Walk away with a premium exit package or risk becoming the next cautionary tale about overreach. Lauren smiled coldly. You're calling from a blocked number, offering shadow money and trying to intimidate me before the quarter closes. You think I'm scared? I think you're smart, Graves said evenly. Smart enough to know when a fight isn't worth it. Lauren ended the call without a goodbye. She sat there in silence for a long time, not shaken, just steadying herself. They wanted to scare her back into the shadows, make her question herself, make her doubt. But Lauren had never moved from fear. She moved from vision. And that vision, it wasn't just about her. The next week, she called an all-hands meeting. Not virtual, not optional. Every department, every floor, every name badge. The auditorium filled quickly. People whispered, some curious, others skeptical, most unsure. Lauren stepped onto the stage, not with a prepared speech or a teleprompter, but with the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. I know a lot of you didn't want me here, she began. No sugarcoating, no fluff. I know some of you think I stole this role, that I cut corners, that I moved too fast, that I'm not like the CEOs you're used to. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning. And not. That's the point. She scanned the room. I'm not here to be who you're used to. I'm here to build what should have been built a long time ago. A company that's brilliant, not just for who it hires, but for who it listens to, for who it promotes, for who it protects. A few heads nodded. Slowly. I didn't come to maintain. I came to reconstruct. Lauren paused. Let the silence work for her. And if that scares you, good. Maybe fear will move you faster than comfort ever did. He walked off the stage without waiting for applause. And still people clapped. Not loud, not long, but real. Behind her, Naomi whispered, You just cracked them open. Lauren didn't look back. We'll see who's still standing when the dust clears. The news broke on a rainy Tuesday morning, but Lauren wasn't watching the headlines. She was helping a junior analyst fix a messy data model. Kneeling next to his desk, hair tied up, sleeves rolled to her elbows, she explained what nested logic was while sipping a watered-down iced coffee. The rest of the office buzzed with energy, half confusion, half awe. Lauren, Naomi said, breathless, holding her phone with shaking hands. It's trending. Everywhere. Everywhere. Lauren raised an eyebrow. What is? Naomi turned the screen toward her. A breaking alert blinked in red beneath the headline. SEC investigation uncovers board-wide insider scheme. Jeffrey Kane under federal scrutiny. Below it, whistleblower identified as former strategy head, now CEO, Lauryn Braxton. Lauren's throat went dry. She hadn't intended for it to happen this way. The anonymous tips she passed on to the investigation team were never about revenge. It was just the truth. The whole time she'd focused on rebuilding, on fairness, on bringing light where there had only been quiet rot. But now the world knew. And it wasn't just one story. The New York Times, Forbes, Black Enterprise, even Teen Vogue ran simultaneous profiles. Each one painted her not as the angry disruptor, but as the woman who changed the rules without raising her voice. By noon, the company's inbox was flooded with speaking requests, podcast invitations, and offers from Ivy League business schools asking her to guest lecture. The public, it seemed, had caught up to what Lauren had already known. Power is not how loud you speak, it's whether they have to listen. Still, she stayed in her office that afternoon, alone. Quiet. The noise outside, the buzz of admiration, the applause, the flashbulb praise, was a world away from what this moment actually felt like. Because this wasn't victory. It was restoration. Her name was no longer a question. It was an answer. Lauryn stood up, crossed to the floor-to-ceiling windows, and looked out across the city. Below her, life moved on. Taxis honked. People rushed to lunch. Some intern somewhere was probably late and panicking over coffee orders. She smiled. Not the smirk of triumph, but the gentle, almost childlike smile of someone who, for the first time, wasn't holding her breath anymore. Behind her, Naomi poked her head in. "The mayor's office just called. They want to give you an award." "Tell them I'll think about it," Lauryn replied. "And Oprah's people?" Lauryn turned. "What?" Naomi grinned. "I'm not joking. She wants to talk," she said, and I quote, "That girl's voice is holy fire." Lauryn laughed for the first time in weeks. "You better not be playing." "Would I play with Oprah?" Naomi deadpanned. Lauryn sat back down, finally feeling the weight shift from her shoulders. There would be more battles. That was inevitable. But she'd proven something the world couldn't unsee. And, what's more, she'd done it without becoming what they feared. She hadn't become cold, or cruel, or petty. She had stayed Lauryn, whole, human, unapologetic. She picked up her phone and called her mother. When the soft, familiar voice answered, Lauryn said, "Hey, Mama." "I saw," her mom replied before Lauryn could say more. "You were already mine. But now the whole world knows it." Tears pricked Lauryn's eyes. "Thank you for never telling me to quiet down," she whispered. "Why would I?" her mother said. "Your voice was born to be heard." 2 months later, the company's culture had changed in ways no press release could capture. The glass conference rooms weren't so silent anymore. New voices, young, bold, overlooked voices, took up space and filled the air with fresh ideas. The cafeteria featured food trucks curated by small business vendors from marginalized neighborhoods, not for diversity points, but because Lauryn had grown up eating tamales from Ms. Rivera's cart, and she knew value, didn't always wear a suit. Parental leave had doubled, mental health days were protected, salaries were no longer whispered secrets, they were public, transparent, and fair. In the lobby, a new plaque had been installed. It wasn't fancy, just metal and matte black. It read, "This company was built by many hands, but it became great when we started listening to all of them." Lauryn didn't sign it in full, that wasn't her style. She had no interest in statues or glory. She was interested in legacy. On her way out that evening, she saw a new intern sitting on the bench near the elevators. She was young, probably no older than 22. Nervous, awkward, braids pulled back too tight, hands fidgeting with the corner of her notebook. Lauryn stopped, sat beside her. "You okay?" The girl blinked. I feel like I don't belong here." Lauryn looked her in the eye. "That's how you know you do." The girl furrowed her brow. "What?" Lauryn smiled gently. "This place used to be built so people like us didn't belong. But now you do. That discomfort? It's them adjusting to you, not the other way around." The girl's lips curled into a soft smile, a flicker of belief. Lauryn stood. "Come find me Monday. I want to hear what you're working on." And just like that, the girl's posture changed. Because Lauryn knew real power isn't passed down. It's offered up, shared, taught. She stepped into the elevator, alone but never lonely. On the way down, she looked at her reflection in the polished chrome. The woman staring back wasn't angry anymore. She was calm. She was clear. She was crowned, not with gold or glitter, but with something rarer. Respect earned, truth honored, and a voice no longer silenced.